Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news. How are you feeling this morning? How are you feeling about what happened yesterday in Ruben Amorim's first game? I think he has sent a very big message to the fans, to the owners and to the players about the situation at Manchester United and what needs to change really. We're in for a long road. There is still a massive part of me this morning as we get into this that, look, let's just hit some of the headlines we're going to get. There's a massive outpouring of selling Marcus Rashford. I mean, I've seen it on the TV, heard it on the radio, I've seen it on social media. Rashford seems to be a player that people are going for. I've got two others that should be right up there, by the way. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Amorim's biggest statement after the game yesterday, which I think many of us picked up on as being absolutely huge. Also, I think you've got to throw a big curveball at INEOS and say, really, it's over to you now. You've got your structure, you've got your manager. Are you going to do anything about the players? I also want to talk about an IQ issue at Manchester United. And let's talk about what's going to happen this season. Because I think before yesterday, understandably, there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of excitement. There was talk of top four. We saw against Ipswich yesterday, whether you've got Amorim in charge, Pep Guardiola in charge, or a dream team of Amorim, Pep and Ancelotti, you still have to send 11 players out. Amorim doesn't go on the pitch. Pep doesn't go on the pitch. You're still relying on a set of players that it amazes me that people are still doing the same saying, I hate to say, continuing doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. I mean, it's almost like some people were shocked. I think most people yesterday got it, even at full time. But some people were actually shocked that because we brought a new manager in, we didn't play well. And I'm like, some of these people were Ten Hag out. There wasn't a reason to keep Ten Hag. I'm not saying that. But some of these people genuinely thought it was about the manager. And this is what I and many other people said for the last year. It's not the manager. The manager is not the problem at Manchester United. If the manager's the problem, why is it in Amorim's first game that this lot can barely raise an average performance? It's a footballing IQ issue at Manchester United. That's what it is. And I think that is something that we need to look at, because if Ipswich can do what they did to us yesterday, and they should have won, actually, having slept on it, I've watched the highlights this morning. There's two things I want to say that, well, he got man of the match. Onana this season's been fantastic. I had concerns coming into the season. I think, I'm not going to regret the video I did a couple of months ago. I stand by it. Coming into the season, I was very, very concerned about Onana. This year, for me, easily player of the season for Manchester United. And some of the saves he's made have been remarkable. I wish he could have done this last season, but it doesn't matter. He's doing it this season. The second thing I would say is that Ipswich deserved to win that game. They had way better chances than us. Our best chance of the game was really the goal. And beyond that, we did next to nothing. So taking that into context, if Ipswich can deserve to beat us at Portman Road, what happens when we go to Spurs in the Carabao Cup? What happens when we go to Anfield in January? What happens when we go to the Etihad in a couple of weeks? And what happens when we go to the Emirates a week on Wednesday? We're playing 4 very good teams in the next month, and we're probably going to lose all 4 based on yesterday. So what I think my message to United fans is, and the message to myself, is if you don't realise this is going to go bad, then you are setting yourself up to be going Amorim out and doing the same old rubbish again. Now, if it goes better than bad, great. But I'm fully expecting issues, because the work he has got to do is incredible. And I was speaking to somebody this morning, and I saw a few Liverpool fans this morning on the school run, and they were quite sympathetic, actually. They didn't need to be. And I did say a couple of times, well, look at what happened with Klopp when he first came in. If you look at Klopp's first few weeks, there was some, I think they lost to Bournemouth, maybe at Anfield, I can't remember, but they had some bad results. But then a Liverpool fan said to me, shout out to Neil, he said, yeah, but Klopp didn't have player power to deal with at Liverpool. He had a team that was on its arse, that was willing to do anything he wanted. And I think that's the thing I'm taking away this morning, is that you can look at the start of Arteta and you can look at the start of Klopp, and it wasn't great, but they had free will to remove Aubameyang and Ozil, and Klopp had free will to get rid of Coutinho and everybody else. He didn't come into a club where you've got 2 or 3 players that are on huge wages and are almost being told by the board, you've got to pick them. Now, I don't know whether that's true, but I would say this morning, and we're going to talk about the players now, and we can talk about Amorim, and I think he did make a mistake yesterday, but I don't want to see Amorim being thrown under the bus here. And I already know the players that aren't good enough. So the key to this solution is INEOS. You can't just go, we put a board in place, we put a manager in place and then leave it. They now have to do what they're in to do. They've done good stuff so far. I like the signings of the summer. I like the recruitment of the management team. I like the recruitment of the manager. Now complete the job. Finish what you've started. Go and remove the players, because if you don't do that, you're no different to the Glazers. The Glazers said no to Jose when he wanted to get rid of players. Are you going to say no to Amorim? Because there is absolutely no way, when you watch that game back yesterday and you look at Amorim, there's no way he's not thinking what you're thinking. There's no way he's looking at that same game and going, I reckon I'm all right. I think these players can do a job for me. He knows as well as we do. The biggest statement he made yesterday was absolutely this. Decision-making is a concern. You don't need to coach them in this level with regards to that. We're doing some things not in the right moment, and that's what we have to address. Well, yabba dabba do. Welcome to Manchester United, because we've been saying this for a long time. People talk about coaching. It ain't bloody coaching. Some of it will be coaching. We'll stick with the 3-4-3. There's no doubt about that. He'll figure out what his best 11 is. There's no doubt about that. But this is not coaching. And I'm so glad that Amorim has said 3 things in the last few days. One of them, we give the ball away too much. 2 of them, we don't work hard enough. That was before yesterday. And afterwards yesterday, he basically said, we are doing things that make me concerned in relation to decision making, that you don't need to coach them at this level. Absolutely spot on. It's football IQ. We've had words in the past that mean a lot to this community. Ruthless aggression, being ruthless in getting rid of players, aggressive in getting players in. I tell you what now, football IQ, graveyard shift. There are certain words that resonate. Football IQ is abundantly clear. Not one United player wasn't trying yesterday, but about 8 of them aren't good enough. That's the problem. We need to stop saying they're not trying. You're giving them credit. When you're saying they're not trying, it's like if they do try, they're good enough. They're not good enough. They don't have the IQ. They're simply not good enough. I said this in the match reaction yesterday. Why is it that so many players consistently play below average? It's not because they can't be arsed. It's because they're not good enough. And that's what Amorim's saying. Some of the decision making, you don't coach it. It's natural. You can't coach somebody to play a 5-yard pass to a player who's not marked when you're not marked and they miss the pass. How do you do that? And it happens all the time. We're absolutely shit when it comes to the basics at football. And I don't know whether that's going to improve. So I look at it and I go, Amorim yesterday sends a big message there. When he's saying it's not about coaching, they're doing things that you should know how to do. Well, welcome to the football club. This is what we've been saying for a long time. Some of these players just aren't good enough. And that's Amorim publicly saying some of these players aren't good enough. When he says some of the things they're doing, it's not about coaching. It's about IQ. It's simple. Some of them are just not good enough. And that's a message to the fans, but we already know it. And I'll say it again. I'm over the moon that Amorim saw that yesterday, because what if we'd won yesterday and for the next 3 months? Oh, everybody's great. Everything is brilliant. And we'd be going, it's not though. They're just covering up what they really are. He saw them in 4K yesterday, what they really are in day one. We already know. He's playing catch up. If he's coming in and giving every player a clean slate, which he's entitled to do, it's going to take him to learn what we already know. We already know if they go and win 5 games, it's not the truth. We know what we saw yesterday is the truth. And the great thing is, Amorim saw it on game 1. So this is a positive, I think. But the real message has to be, INEOS need to wake up and stop thinking they can do what the Glazers did by changing a manager and saying to the new manager, you can't sell these players, you've got to polish a turd. And if INEOS are saying to Amorim, you can't sell these players, you've got to polish a turd, then we will be back here in 2.5 years, 100%. And we saw it yesterday. Because I tell you what, what's going to happen in the next few weeks when there's more Ipswich games? And there will be. There will be more Ipswich games. We're not going to be ready for Arsenal next Wednesday. There's no way we're going to be ready for Arsenal next Wednesday. If Arsenal play badly, we might get something. But if we play like we did yesterday, we'll get beat. Even Man City will beat us. So we have got some beatings coming before Christmas. And the interesting thing is going to be how the media react, but more importantly, how the fans react. Because I saw stuff yesterday about the media I saw stuff from the media yesterday. It wasn't hard hitting, but it was almost tongue in cheek. But they're getting ready. They're getting ready, and they will do it. They will go in. Let's talk about some of the players, because honestly, I think this is the big thing to talk about this morning, and we don't need to shirk away from it. So get your comments in. So many people have said to me, and I've read it as well, Rashford needs to go. Rashford needs to go. And the interesting thing about the Rashford thing is he scored 85 goals in about 280 games. So he's got the same amount of goals as Eden Hazard and was it Torres at Liverpool. He's averaging about 1 goal every 3 games. So you can understand why a manager comes in and goes, well, 1 goal every 3 games, that's a useful player to me. But the reality isn't the stats. The interesting thing about Rashford yesterday is that I personally think Casemiro is more of an issue. But I'll talk about that in a minute, because people said yesterday, you criticise Rashford, but you keep bringing Bruno in. So why don't you just focus on Rashford? So here I go. The interesting thing about Rashford yesterday is we got the goal, we got the celebration, and he still got absolutely panned by the majority after the game. So we get the goal, we get the smile, we get the celebration, and he still gets criticised. So I think this goes back to what I was talking about before. In his current form, no hate, no agenda, no toxicity. He ain't good enough. He ain't good enough. I don't need to do what some people do. I don't need to scream and shout and let it all out and call him shit and all this, that, and the other. He just ain't good enough. That's the bottom line. At the moment, he's not good enough. He was one of the players, if we're being completely honest, that Amorim was referring to, because I saw him 3 or 4 times lay off the ball absolutely unforgivably badly when the pass was easy. I don't think he looked particularly quick. I know Garnacho should have played him in, but he was not. He didn't look as quick. He wasn't going in for 50-50s, and he doesn't press very well. He runs in a straight line. So I gave him 5 out of 10 yesterday, which is below average. I'll stand by it. I don't need to play silly games. I don't need Rashford FC on my back saying you're toxic. And I don't need people on here telling me I protect Rashford. I'm confused. I don't know what I do. Do I dislike Rashford? Am I in the fan club? Do I protect him? Do I go in on him too hard? I'm not interested in all that baby talk. I'm not interested in it. It's immature. The bottom line is I look at him and I think that he is a player that I would not be picking for Manchester United at the moment. And I think Amorim got it wrong playing him up front. I accept it, because he's not managed Man United before, but we spoke about it all week. There's no way, in my mind, he is a striker. Even if he scores every week, he didn't play well yesterday. What are goals in the modern game? They're important, but he scored yesterday and he had a bad game, and we didn't win. So the goal really means nothing, because would Rasmus have got on the end of that strike, that cross? Maybe, maybe not. But he offers a hell of a lot more. And I think Erling Haaland offers away a lot more. Like, I don't see a future with Rashford up front, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying he wouldn't score goals, but he doesn't have the tools to play up front. And I'll argue that with anybody. Until he proves me wrong, he doesn't have the tools to play up front. If we're going to pick him, he's got to play him behind the striker. But then we saw yesterday he's passing so bad. I mean, I don't think Garnacho had a great game, I'm not going to lie, but Amorim actually called Garnacho out after the game and said, I really liked the way he receives the ball in between the lines. So Amorim saw something in Garnacho that he felt he needed to praise him after the game. He liked the way that he was picking the ball up in between the lines. First 20 minutes, I agree. He was a bit wasteful in the rest of the game. But, I mean, where does... The honest answer is, and this is where I bring Casemiro in, I think from yesterday, if I'm being completely blunt, and why not, there are a number of players that I would have concerns about the future, and if I was Amorim, I'd be putting them down the list. I think he got his team selection wrong yesterday. The only thing I would say, and we are allowed to critique Amorim. We are allowed. Don't ever think that you're not allowed to because we've got a new manager. You are allowed to critique Amorim. The point is, he's got a really hard job, and he will make mistakes. And I think when he gets things wrong, you've got to go, well, I'd expect him to get it wrong because he's new in a job. He got his team wrong yesterday. The team was completely wrong, but I think he picked it because he picked players that he'd had training with him for longer. But he got the team wrong. Rasmus should have started up front. Agate should have played in the midfield. I don't know whether Mainu was fit enough. And unfortunately, I think Johnny Evans had to start because of injury, but that would have been Martinez for me, Luke Shaw if he'd have been fit, Yoro if he'd been ready. So I think there was 2 or 3 selections he got wrong yesterday. But he actually referred to as well injuries. He said, I've spoken so much time to physios this week, I just want to get playing. And that's welcome to Manchester United time. But I look at that United team yesterday and I think we've spoken about Rashford. I don't know where he fits into the team. I'm sure he's going to get more opportunities. He may stay up front, but I don't think up front's the word for him. I think certainly not out wide. He's going to have to play in behind the striker. But you know what it felt like to me yesterday, Rashford? It felt like we put him in the place where he'd caused the least damage. And that's really concerning. Because if you put him in behind the striker, you need somebody who's going to run a lot and you need somebody with a bit of creativity. Well, he ain't got that. If you put him on the wing, he ain't got that because he's got to work really hard when it's a back five. So I think there was almost Amorim's submission that he's got to pick him. And where's the best place I can pick him that's not going to cause the team the most problem? And he put him up front. And he scored a goal. But you can't accommodate players. I've said this before. At this level, you can't carry players. Maybe 10 years ago you could. Maybe 12 years ago. Maybe 15 years ago. But you can't anymore. I think that if I would worry about where Rashford's going to play. I don't know whether Rashford's worried. He gets paid no matter what. But if I was Amorim, I'd be worried about this. What have you said to INEOS about Rashford? Because if you've promised you're going to get the best out of him, my big concern is, I hope you're right. I do. I really do. If we can have the player back from 2 years ago, we'll be fine. But are we ever going to get that player back? Some people think he's lost pace. Some people think he's lost focus. Personally, I just don't think he's that good. I don't think he's as good as people think he is. And that doesn't mean he's bad. But what I'm saying is, if you think you've got Zidane and you've got James Maddison, you're always expecting Zidane. James Maddison's not a bad player, but he ain't Zidane. And I think with United, we're expecting Mbappe, yeah? And we've got St. Maximin. We haven't got what we think we've got. And we keep trying to get it. And the scary thing is, if Amorim thinks he's got Mbappe, and INEOS think they've got Mbappe, and you keep waiting for Mbappe, and everyone else is looking at it and going, he ain't Mbappe. He's not rubbish, but he ain't that. And I think that's the bottom line. I think with Rashford, based on the last year and a half, I don't think he's as good as people think him. Even I keep thinking he's going to spark. I don't think he is going to spark. I think he's going to do bits like he did last season. Scored a great goal against Tottenham, Man City. Scored yesterday. Played well in sport against who did we play? Porto. Played well against Porto. But I think the problem is we think he's better than he is. And look, maybe we'll get proved wrong on that. You have to remember that Amorim is new to problems that we already know. I hope he clocks onto the problems quicker than Ten Hag did, says Kyle. Yeah, 100%. Robert McCormack says Rashford would have had a hat-trick if Garnacho could pass, says Robert McCormack. Yeah, but Robert, that's if buts and maybes. Rasmus could have had a hat-trick if he'd have started the game. You're not... Look, I know you're a massive Rashford fan. I don't know whether you've got pictures on the wall. But I don't think that... what's gone wrong? No, what's wrong with the mic? Hello, everybody. That's mad. It's gone low. Hello, everybody. Okay, that's back. That should be back. I don't know what. That's weird. I've clicked the wrong mouse and it's knocked the audio down, which is crazy. Let me knock that back up again. Should be back. Sorry about that. It's because it's Robert McCormack's fault. He's always sabotaging with his nonsense. No, what I was going to say to Robert is, Robert, maybe he could have had a hat-trick yesterday. Maybe you're absolutely correct, but am I wrong in what I'm saying? I don't think he's a striker, and I don't think he's as good as people think he is. Said this to you in PM months ago. He's not the player people think he is. He's not world-class, which his wages suggest, says Anders. Look, I honestly think that I want Rashford to do well. I want Casemiro to do well. I want everybody to do well. And I want Amorim to do well. And I'm not going to scream and shout about this. And if Rashford wants to reply on Twitter, please do. It was about a year ago when you did it before, and that was completely over the top. If he wants to reply on Twitter, that's absolutely fine. But I would ask him to watch the video. At what point am I screaming, ranting, abusing, or being toxic? I think the bottom line is you're not as good as you're meant to be. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the problem in your head. Maybe the whole club, the whole fan base, and the player himself need to have an honest conversation that actually, on his day, he's a decent player, but he's not as good as everybody thinks he is. And this pressure is causing the problem. Look, maybe Amorim's going to turn him into Alexander Isak up front. Maybe he can be that type of a striker. But I just think that I would rather, if I'm being honest, see Amorim trying to turn Rasmus into Gyökeres because he's got more of the traits of an out-and-out striker. But we'll wait and see. Rather than coaching these overpaid and lazy players in the basics, Amorim might as well coach promising, talented youth players, says Gandos. The shift when he goes is the key, not a manager, says MMA. I hope he goes in this morning like Sir Alex, says Tracy Taylor. Xerxes plays like he wants a standing ovation for making a 5-yard pass, says Kay. You take an issue when people pointed Rasmus had low IQ, says Vinny. Don't know what that's got anything to do with. First manager brave enough to call the obvious out, says Parker. And he needs to keep doing that. Amorim needs to keep doing that. Remember what I said about Ten Hag's first season? He spoke a lot of sense. Second season, he spoke a load of shit. It was almost like something happened behind the scenes where he was told to stop talking sense. Rangnick spoke sense, got kicked out of the football club. Amorim's talking a lot of sense. I just hope he doesn't get censored because that has happened in the past. One hope for Amorim is the team that started yesterday is not the team he will likely use from now on. It's clear some players are not at the top level. It's clear a lot of this squad is overhyped, says Patrick. Vita says, strange feeling because I'm happy somehow we didn't win and I want us to win, but it's a reality check. I'm loving this show this morning. You're absolute legends. What a community. Vita, I've got to be honest. I don't know how I would have felt if we'd have won 5-0. Obviously, I would have felt better. But I've got to be honest. Although Ipswich deserved to win and we drew and we didn't play well, I actually feel really optimistic. Because I think the most important thing is that the manager sees the truth ASAP. And he saw our truth yesterday. Were you shocked yesterday by the performance of some of those players? No. Was Amorim? Yes. Do I feel bad for Amorim? No. I'm sort of like, you now know what we know. And the funny thing is, can I just explain this to the media and some United fans? We've just sacked our manager because we're shit. When we play shit against Ipswich, he's just seen why Ten Hag got sacked. If he comes in and they start playing really well, he'll be like, I don't know why. It must have been Ten Hag's fault. I don't know what the problem was. And the best thing those players did yesterday is expose themselves. Because when Ollie took over for Mourinho and they went and won every week, Ollie's going, Ollie's at the wheel with Carricky. It must have been Jose Carricky. We're great. And that could have happened yesterday, where Amorim comes in, they play really well, and Amorim sat there going, Ten Hag was clearly the problem. I'm the guy. You know, I'm the guy. Look at me. They all love me and they're responding to me. Ten Hag was just a boring twat or whatever like that. And the truth is, they played exactly like they did for Ten Hag. And that's because the players are the problem. So I'm very happy that we've seen that, like Vita. John says, the IQ problem is the fans. I've heard people say we should play what suits the players. What's even the point of getting a new manager if we're not going to suit his system? Let's back him properly, says John. Thank you very much for your super chat, John. Matthew Peacock, welcome to the Members Club. You're a legend. Thank you very much. I mean, look, I will address this. I didn't really want to, but let me just say this. The people who are saying that he needs to change his system, he's not changing his system. And I tell you what, brothers and sisters, I'm with him. Who's with me and Amorim? Do not change your system for these players. We got you a manager who plays a system throughout his whole career so far. From where he started through Braga to Sporting, he plays 3-4-3. If there is any Pratt fan, pundit, or anybody out there going, he needs to change his system, we may as well have given the job to Postman Pat and hope that he can deliver. Because Amorim plays 3-4-3 and plays a distinctive style of football. What's the point in getting him in and him changing for these bunch of prats? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid. It's like getting an electrician to come round your house and then asking him to paint the wall. We've got a specialist. Let him do it. Give him the tools. Don't give him a tin of paint. Give him some wires. Yeah? It was so refreshing to hear Amorim's thoughts after the game. He said exactly what this community has been saying for a long time, says Matthias. Let's just hope he keeps speaking the truth, because as I say, he basically sent a massive, massive message to us and the players and the fan and INEOS that this is a footballing IQ issue. And I think he's also sent a massive transfer message as well. They need to give him better players. There are a bunch of players at Sporting that could do this system in this league. There are a bunch of players in Europe and the Premier League that could do this system in this league. This system is not the problem. It's the ingredients. This system will work. We've seen this system work. It will work, but it won't work with the wrong players. So INEOS's job is very simple. Pull your finger out your arse, remove this shit, and bring in better players. Stop polishing turds. Stop trying to squish square pegs into round holes. This is what needs to happen. It's a big transfer warning. Glad to see Amorim sees what the players are not capable of. Shame he didn't win his first game, but glad he can now pick out the deadwood. Let's hope that he does, says Connor. Mate, look, we've had a massive reality strike. We've had a massive warning, and we will get more and more of them. 100%. 343, amen, says John. Ginger Woods, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. We need 4 or 5 more players who make intelligent, effective decisions on the ball. Players like Ahmad and Mainu will benefit us a lot, says James. I thought Ahmad was very good yesterday. We just didn't get him the ball. I think Rashford coming through a bad time for United when he was an exciting youngster made the club and fans naively hold him as our star boy. Now we have an okay player on 300k a week. But mate, thanks for the super chat, but I think you're absolutely correct. I think the big problem is, and obviously some people will be offended by this, it's not toxic, it's not abuse, it's an opinion, and it's based on calmness. He's not as good as people think he is. And we're chasing something that's going to be unachievable. Maybe he can play that world-class game 1 every 20 or 1 every 10, but Ashley Young could do that. No one said Ashley Young was Mbappe. He just ain't that player. He hasn't got the consistency and he hasn't got the IQ. He's got certain traits that other people have figured out as well. Look, I agree with Robert McCormack. If you feed him chances in the box, he'll score. He scored yesterday, but he won't hold the ball up. He won't press well. He's not physical and he won't link up the play. So basically, you are looking at Darren Bent. And those types of strikers don't exist anymore. Or Gary Lineker. You're looking at a striker who literally, you've got to do absolutely everything for them. You've got to give them chances in the box. That's not enough in the modern game. It's not enough in the modern game. It really isn't. That's what a championship striker does. And even in the championship, it wouldn't be enough. You've got to run the lines. You've got to battle the centre-backs. You've got to link up the play. You've got to be physical. And you've got to press. Scoring goals in the penalty box, he's brilliant at, but that's not going to be enough. I hope by end of December we'll be able to see which players can adopt Amorim's system in readiness for a summer clear-out, says Enzumo. And I think Amorim sees the light. Let's see if our club move on what every manager sees. I want the hardship so we can do this properly, says Ray. Yesterday was very underwhelming, says JR. I thought they would fight more for Amorim. I thought it was disgusting, JR, actually. I know I said that in the match reaction, but that's the only thing that really confused me yesterday. Why is it in a manager's first game, I'd be disgusted. You know what? If I was the manager, I'd have had them all sat in the dressing room and I'd have gone, Onana, Ahmad, De Ligt and Mazraoui, go and sit on that side of the room. The rest of you sit over here. You lot, you don't need to listen to this. You lot, my first game, Manchester United shirt, you can't even give me a 6. You can't even give me average. You give me below average in my first game. What the fuck message are you sending to me? Do you want to say it to my face? Because I've just seen it on the pitch. What message are you sending to me in my first game when you can't even put in an average performance? I would expect you to be running, busting your gut, giving me the game of your life. I'm expecting good as a minimum. I'm expecting exceptional, world class, brilliant, top class. I don't even get average. So one by one, tell me what your message is to me, because you've just made me look like a right mug. That's what I would be saying, because I was stunned by that. But you know what? I don't think it was a lack of effort. I think it's a lack of IQ. And we need to wake up to that. So many people say they're not trying, they're not running. They're not good enough. That's the problem. And they either get good enough or they get out. We need to complete cultural reset, says Zion, and it should start by removing this player who has had privileges under 4 managers. No brand players anymore, says Zion. James Hooper, thank you very much. He had 13 touches, feed him, says Robert McCormack. If Rashford could find the form Ten Hag's first season, then we wouldn't be having this debate, but he's far too consistent, says Luca. But you know what, Luca? You make a really good point. The form that Rashford was in a position that doesn't exist. He was playing as a left winger, forward, with no real defensive responsibilities out on the left wing. That position doesn't even exist anymore. Is that a concern? But where I kick in is that, look, he's not the problem at Man United. It's not just Marcus Rashford. Because I saw people yesterday saying Garnacho's the problem or Bruno's still the problem. And the reality is there's more than one problem at Manchester United to solve. One massive problem that I think comes out of yesterday that won't get any headlines is Casemiro. I think Casemiro is a huge issue for Manchester United. So big an issue that INEOS tried to get rid of him in the summer and no one would take him. He is on £350,000 a week. He has not got the mobility and he got absolutely bullied by Ipswich's midfield. Ipswich's midfield. If I'd said to you 3 years ago, Casemiro in 3 years' time will get bullied by Ipswich's midfield, what league were Ipswich even in 3 years ago? But he was playing for Real Madrid. He ain't it. He ain't it. Occasionally, his quality shows. His passing in the final third is probably his biggest trait now. He used to be the best holding midfielder in the world, and we now praise him for creativity. He doesn't do the job we bought him to do. You know, he's actually meant to be a holding midfielder on 350k a week, and the good things he does are creatively. He is a massive problem for Manchester United. The Rashford problem, you can solve it. You could sell him for 40 million quid and it's still pure profit. But Casemiro's got 2 years left on his contract on 350k a week. I don't see anything but problems when he plays in that pivot. I think he's slightly better with Ugarte next to him. I don't think, and again, I'll say this. I don't know why Amorim went with Eriksen and Casemiro. That was a mistake. A massive mistake. And if he did it in a month, you'd have to call it out. In his first game, you'd go, I know it. Mick knows it. James knows it. Moore knows it. Vinny Red One knows it. We all know Casemiro and Eriksen in a pivot is a bloody one-way ticket to disappointment. But Amorim in his first game has to learn the things that we already know. I don't think he'll ever do it again. And if he does do it again, he'll deserve more criticism. So Eriksen wasn't very good yesterday. But Casemiro's a huge problem. A huge problem for Man United because we are absolutely balls deep in trouble there. We basically got to bench Casemiro on 350k a week for the rest of the season. He can't be starting games for United because we will get bullied. You put Casemiro in the midfield against any team in the Premier League now and you're going to be worried that he's going to get bullied. And he did get bullied. He's too slow. So, you know, you can talk about Rashford. Rashford scored a goal. Rashford can score goals. Like, you know, it is an issue, but it's, I mean, I think Casemiro is the biggest issue. I think Johnny Evans, Christian Eriksen, I agree, they are issues, but they're gone at the end of the season. Casemiro's not necessarily gone. So, look, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpick, but I think for me, I can't hide the fact that I actually feel quite optimistic because our manager now knows what we know, the truth. We need a massive overhaul, says Danny. The manager get rid of rotten apples, Glazers out. Anders says the Rashford hype train's gone on for too long. Enjoyed your interview with Tony's channel, Mark. Awesome content. Yes, do check that out. I was in Manchester last week and I went on the Webby and O'Neill channel. Big chat for about an hour with Tony. Asked me some questions about the United stands and people who've left and you know, really good questions. I really enjoyed it. I like doing that sort of thing. So do check it out. I think it's only just come out. I need to retweet it actually. Kevin says, people questioning 3-4-3. How did he beat City then with a 3-4-3 with his Sporting side? It's clearly the player's fault. Kevin, I genuinely, I'm just going to give you an analogy on this. And it's really, really simple. In a lasagna, you have the pasta, you have the cheese, you have the bolognese sauce, okay? And part of that bolognese sauce is the mince. Yeah? If you go round to Amorim's house and he cooks a lovely lasagna every week, fantastic, like he was at Sporting. If you go round yesterday and it doesn't taste right because he hasn't used mince, he's used chocolate and it tastes like shit, that's because the ingredients aren't right. He can still cook a lovely lasagna, but he didn't have any mince. So he's had to put something in there that doesn't work. Well, I tell you what, that was what happened yesterday. You cannot criticise something that doesn't have the right ingredients. I find it incredible that people would criticise the 3-4-3 and the manager when he clearly doesn't have the ingredients. I've been saying for years, many of you have been saying for years, that Pep Guardiola would fail at Manchester United. And I stand by it. And some people have defied that logic and said, nah, I don't agree. He's such a good coach, he would get them playing really, really well. I disagree. I absolutely disagree, because the manager for me is not the problem. I think we've needed to change managers. I think even with Ten Hag, it had got to the point where something had to change and you're never going to sack the players. But Bruno alluded to it himself in the international break. You don't sack players. It's always going to be the manager. And that's what we saw. We saw a manager that got sacked. And I think that if we're not careful, we'll start heading down that route again, where we start to criticise a manager. And look, you've got to keep it imprinted in your mind. The manager is not the problem at Manchester United. It is not. It really is, fundamentally, for years, as far as Mourinho, it's the inability to clear players out. Oh, let's give ourselves a Blue Peter badge. We got rid of Varane. We didn't get rid of Varane. He was out of contract. Oh, we got rid of Martial. We didn't get rid of Martial. He was out of contract. Oh, look at how ruthless we've been with De Gea. He was out of contract. It's very easy to play Billy Big Bollocks when you get rid of a big wage and you go, look at how ruthless we are getting rid of De Gea and Martial and Varane. Oh yeah, massively ruthless. They had nothing left on their contract. We don't get rid of players that are on big wages and big contracts. Other clubs do. And until we do that, we will always be struggling. And that is a fact at Manchester United. And we need to change that. We need to change it, because as Moloch says, it's fake ruthlessness. I said it at the start of the video and I'll say it again. I don't want to criticise INEOS. I'm not criticising them. I'm demanding they do their job, because I think they've done a good job so far, but I demand they do a better job. And a better job is going to be the ability to remove players that the Glazers never did. I've mentioned Casemiro. Many of you have mentioned Rashford. We could throw Bruno in there, although I think it's very obvious from yesterday that Amorim sees Bruno as fundamental. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't think Bruno played that well yesterday. I gave him a 6. But I think in Bruno, again, you've got a player that won't be going anywhere. But look, if Luke Shaw gets injured again, you've got to try and find a way of getting rid of him. It's as simple as that. Dammy says, what you're saying makes no sense. If you don't have the right ingredients, don't make the food. If we don't have the players, don't play the formation. Oh, shut up. I'm sorry to be, so blunt. What does that even mean? So what you're saying is, if we don't have the right ingredients, don't make the food. So we just sit and sink in shit forever because we don't make a change. What did Liverpool do with Jurgen Klopp? They didn't have the ingredients. So they shouldn't have got Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool shouldn't have got Jurgen Klopp then. Is that what we're saying? Yeah. That's basically what you're saying. Liverpool should not have got Jurgen Klopp because they didn't have the ingredients. You get the formation, then you get the ingredients. I don't want to hear any morons talking about let's not try 3-4-3. Let's go back to a 5-3-2 or some shit like that. Where do people expect the fight to come from when Eriksen and Casemiro start in the midfield, says River Manu? And I genuinely believe it's better to have dodgy results now and solve problems for the long term than win now and the problems still be there, says Charles. I agree. I absolutely agree. Can you imagine the young players looking up to players like Rashford and Casemiro? These top earners they're supposed to look up to are senior players, says Johnny. Danny, welcome to Members Club. What's a better pairing than Casemiro and Agate, says Vinny. Mainu and Agate, I would think. Abdi says, we could see on Amorim's face at the end of the game the frustration. He told that we'll analyse the dates. We all know that will comes out from it. Data, sorry, says Abdi. Appreciate that for that. Let's see if players turn up on Thursday, says Mr. Bruno. Well, he's got to make changes on Thursday, hasn't he? I think that there are players that need to be given a chance on Thursday. I would like to see some players back from fitness. I mean, look, I'm not opposed to seeing Mason Mount play or Xerxes play. Certainly, I'd like to see Rasmus and Agate start. Hopefully, Martinez or Yoro will be back because I'd like to see them given a chance as well. Obviously, Malacia's on the bench. I would like to see a few changes for Thursday because it's Bodo Glimt. Apparently, Bodo Glimt are not that bad as well. I mean, I don't know, but apparently they're not that bad. So I look forward to that. But I do think that where we are now, we have to be realistic and we have to be willing to back our own opinions. And I know this community and I know a lot of the United fan base because I read and consume it every day of every year. And there is a lot of frustration towards players, and that in a way is unfair, but is correct. The frustration you have towards players should not be leaning towards toxicity and hate and agenda. It really shouldn't. It should be clarity. You should be crystal clear now. You can have players that you think aren't good enough, but that's the key. They're not good enough. You know, stressing about it, getting angry about it, demanding more. If they shock us and become good players, happy days. But I genuinely think Amorim has exposed what we've been saying for years. They're just not good enough. Like he said it after the game. They're doing things you don't get coached. They're doing things that you should already know. They're making mistakes and making decisions that you shouldn't be doing at this level. I mean, how more clear can you get that? He said it after the game. There are things that they're doing on the pitch that don't come from the coaching ground. You should already know how to do it. And we've been saying this for ages. How many misplaced passes? How many misplaced tackles? How many people don't run? This is not about coaching. It really is about a lack of football IQ. And some of them might get better with better teaching, but I find it hard to believe that Ten Hag wasn't telling them what to do, or Jose wasn't telling them what to do, or Rangnick wasn't telling them what to do. It's a footballing IQ thing. And I think the bottom line is INEOS need to wake up and realise they've got one of the biggest wage bills in the world of football, and they've been absolutely mugged off. You know, it's like walking into Vauxhall and paying the price for a Ferrari for a car that's worth about a tenth of that. We've overpaid. Just because it says 350k wages doesn't mean you've got a 350k pay player. Just because you're playing 150k a week doesn't mean you've got a 150k player. If we had players that match the wage, we'd be top of the league. We pay silly money, and because we pay silly money, we want that. This is one of the biggest mistakes the Glazers have made for years. They won't sell a player because they'll go, but we paid £80 million for him. He's on 250k a week. Because they're so thick, they don't understand. You've been mugged off. You've been mugged off. They think they've got an £80 million player on 250k a week. You haven't. You've got a £30 million player who should be on 50k a week. You've been mugged off. That's what's happened. That's what INEOS need to realise. Stop making the mistake of the Glazers where you keep hold of these players because you think they're worth what you paid. You got mugged off. You gave silly contracts. You paid silly wages. You paid silly transfer fees. You've been mugged off. I would like to go through, and maybe we'll do a video on this. I would like to go through that team and tell you what they're really worth. Casemiro, 150k a week. Eriksen, 75k a week. That's half of what he's on. That's those two straight away is half of what they're actually on. Rashford at the moment, 200k a week, top. Mason Mount, 150k a week. That's 100 less than what he's on. Bruno, I don't think Bruno's a 300k a week. I think he's a 200k a week as well. Harry Maguire, 190k is what he's on. 100k is what he should be on. It's a worthwhile exercise. I mean, there's no point us doing it really, but we are paying double to most of our players of what they're actually worth. And don't come at me and tell me I'm wrong, because I'll tell you, can we look at the last 12 months of them playing and tell me how many times they've played 7 or above out of 10? Most of the time it's 6 or a 5. They're not the players we think they are. They're not the players we think they are, and they haven't got the IQ we think they are. And we get frustrated by them because they can't do the things we think they should do, but they can't do them because they're not good enough. It's not because they're not trying. They're not trying. They are trying, they're just not good enough. And that's exactly what Amorim was saying after the game. They're doing things you wouldn't expect a player of that level to be doing. Can he teach them to do it? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. Fantastic show this morning, by the way. Oh, don't forget, I've just remembered, we were off for the international break, but at midday, back in the Goldbridge Arms, loved the watch along there yesterday. We're back in the Goldbridge Arms for the Premier League review show. So lots to talk about Premier League-wise. United will feature again. I'd like to think the majority of United fans have seen by now that the issue doesn't lie solely with the manager. The Glazers fucked us big time, says Chunky. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely correct. I think one of the biggest, this is why INEOS need to be so different, because when you look at what the Glazers have done, they've refused to sell players. Look, if I go to the shops today and I buy a brand new TV for £1,000, and then I get home and I put it on and it only gives me half the channels, and I get a technician around and he goes, mate, this is a really old model. It was good about 5 years ago, but it's really out of date now. I can't fix it for you. The best thing you can do is sell it, get what you can for it, and then go and get the one you want. But I do a Glazer and I go, no, I paid £1,000 for it, even though it's really only worth 300 quid. I paid £1,000 for it. I'm going to keep using it. And then people come round for Christmas or they come down to watch the match, and you can't watch the match because it won't get that channel, and it's, you know, it's crap resolution. But I just keep, I'm not, and people keep saying, just sell it and get what you really want. No, I paid £1,000 for it. It's worth £1,000. I'm convinced. That's what the Glazers have done for the last 10 years. They buy things that are shit, and instead of cashing in and taking the hit, they persist with, no, I paid this, it must be worth it. And that's the mistake that INEOS can't make. INEOS have to go, look, imagine if Xerxes in a year's time is a failure. They've got to cash in. The worst thing they can, or Mount, or I'm trying to think of anybody else that they bought, Delete, whatever, right? They didn't buy Mount, I know. You've got to cash in. You've just got to go, I made a mistake. Because football is full of mistakes. And you've got to go, I made a mistake. And if you've given someone a contract you shouldn't have given them, you've got to get rid and take the hit. And if they don't do that, one thing I will say is this, if Amorim is expected to be successful with the same core of players that weren't successful under Ten Hag and weren't successful for Ollie, and we know who those players are, then he will fail. Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And also, with the passage of time, these players are getting older. They're moving past their best. So these things have to happen. You have a plan, then you buy for that plan. You don't make food without a recipe. You buy the ingredients, says Joshua Jones. Love from Indonesia. Enjoying the show, as always, says Danny. Thanks, Danny. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate that. Chunky Chunks as well. Bjorn says, maybe it's stupid, maybe not, but I genuinely think INEOS need to consider to terminate the contracts of some of these players. It's a matter of time before the same players get him sacked. But we don't know whether they can do that, Bjorn, because the Glazers are still here. Don't you think Sky was disrespectful when they were talking to Amorim and Ed Sheeran turned up, says Tracy Taylor? Fucking absolute jog on Ed Sheeran. We know when she went, oh, we've got Ed Sheeran here. I'd have gone, tell him to fuck off, or I'm walking off. Get stuffed. Absolute nonsense. Roy Keane should have stepped in. I'd like to think the majority of United fans... Look, we've got to be patient, like Chunky Chunk says. Absolutely. Loads to discuss. We're back at 8 o'clock. We've got a 2 o'clock show for you as well. We've got a game on Thursday, which means there's a press conference, etc. I just hope that Amorim keeps talking the truth. As I said, last week he said 2 things. We give the ball away too much and we don't work hard enough. After the game yesterday, he said, we're doing things that you can't train. You should already know them. They're making mistakes that they shouldn't be making as footballers. Absolutely true. Career mode's back this afternoon. Yes, Connor, about 3 o'clock. Thanks everyone for watching. Please do subscribe. We are not on 970. We are on 972. So we're getting closer towards that 2 million and we're trying to hit it for New Year's Eve. So keep sharing the video. Keep subscribing, bottom right-hand corner. Thanks everyone for watching. Get your comments in if you didn't watch live. I'll speak to you all in a bit. We're back at midday as well on That's Football. So hopefully see some of you there. Take care. Great show this morning. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.